Greetings, welcome to Wax and Relax Vinyl Listening Room. I'm John.
I'm John.
I brought my son back on the show to talk about some records, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. We were having a conversation one day on the way home from work about the first record or the first song that you heard from a particular band that has become a lifelong love. And all of these, we're going to talk about 6 of them today. I picked 3, he picked 3. So we're going to talk about 6 different records they all turn out to be from the 80s. Actually, all between 81 and 86. So we're going to take turns. I'll go first. I'll pick one, tell you a little bit of the backstory and a little bit about the record itself, and then he'll pick one, and we're just going to have a little chat about how it all started and how these artists became part of who and what we are. So I'm going to start with 1981, Saxon, Denim and Leather. This all started this record came out in 81. I lived in upstate New York at the time, and we were one of the first areas to get MTV. And back then, a lot of the videos were live performance videos, and most of them came from Europe and the UK. So on early MTV back in 81, 82, we got a lot of the Saxon performance videos, and they played Princess of the Night all the time, and I loved it, fell in love with it, had to go to the mall, buy it. It was on Carrere Records, which is from France, but we were able to get them in America at regular LP prices, and been a lifelong Saxon fan ever since. Denim and Leather came out in 81. Their sweet spot was kind of 80, 81, 82, 83. You had 4 records in there that were just absolute killers. You had Wheels of Steel, you had Denim and Leather, you had
Crusader.
Strong Arm of the Law, and then you had Power and the Glory. Crusader was 84, and that was really their attempt. Well, their attempt to make it in America. There's a song on it called "Coming to America," but I like the record, really well recorded. But the stuff, those 4 records prior to that, are really the sweet spot for me. What do you got?
Mine is Raining Blood by Slayer.
Slayer, Rain and Blood from '86. This is when they went from Metal Blade to Deaf American Records with Rick Rubin. And the way that this came into his life, obviously we're a metal household, and lots of metal being played in and around these parts. And one day, it was one of those VH1 shows, countdown to 100 greatest metal riffs of all time type of thing, and the riff from Rain and Blood was on one of the clips that they showed, and he was, I don't know, super small, kind of preschool, maybe, pre-K kind of age, and his head just snapped around and looked at the TV and just kind of started doing this. I was like, I got one. So yeah, he's grown up, quite the metalhead, and
as you can tell from my shirt, I'm a big Slayer fan.
Yeah, started early and started often. So yeah, we're pretty close to having the complete collection there. All right, I'm gonna go 1982. This is Scorpions, Blackout. Scorpions started for me because in the early 80s I was a gigantic Van Halen fan, and I had heard an interview with David Lee Roth where he had mentioned back in their club days some of the cover songs that they did, and one of the songs they mentioned was Catch Your Train by the Scorpions off of one of the earlier 70s records. And so I picked up that Hot and Heavy record from Scorpions. It was a compilation, and right about the same time, had to be like the same week, went to one of those teen clubs with my friends, and we went into the room. It's dark, flashing lights and all that type of stuff, and they're playing, early 80s dance music, MTV stuff, and all of a sudden they start playing No One Like You, and those first couple of guitar notes hit, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is wonderful. And that was it. I just, as soon as I realized I heard Klaus's voice, I was like, this got to be the Scorpions. And from there, I was all about the Scorpions. For about a year and a half, they were my absolute favorite band. Listened to them constantly. All eras of Scorpions. I fall off sort of right around Savage Amusement. I had it. Not a big fan of it, but everything prior to that, I'm a big fan of. What do you got next?
Mine is Holy Diver by Ronnie James Dio.
All right, Dio's debut. Right after he left Black Sabbath, formed his own band, took Vinny Appice with him. And, yeah, I mean, as good of a record as it can get, it really kind of follows the trajectory of what they did on Heaven and Hell and what they did on Mob Rules. I mean, this would have been like the perfect next record had it been a Sabbath record. But the story in this goes, I think you were in, second or third grade?
About.
And I have a picture of the homework he had to do. And it was just, asking personal questions just to get the kids to talk and maybe, start thinking about writing sentences and all that type of thing. And one of the questions is, what was your favorite song? And at the time, whatever the pop songs were, I'm sure that's what the kids were answering, or it could even be, Elmo songs or, those type of things. And he writes Rainbow in the Dark.
Yep. It's just an iconic riff.
Absolutely. And it was the first time that we really had to kind of accept the fact that there were going to be keyboards in metal. I mean, prior to that, it was more organ, Deep Purple and things like that. But this was a very prominent, that keyboard figure. It was but it worked, and we loved it. Absolutely.
And also, you can't go wrong with his great voice he had.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For my third choice, another one from 1982, Accept, Restless and Wild. This one, pretty cool. It's on Heavy Metal Worldwide, and it's on red vinyl.
Cherry red vinyl.
And what was cool about this was a period of time where you'd go into the record store and you'd go to the import section, because the import section was where they had all the metal records, because they didn't know what to do with them. They had nowhere to put them. They didn't fit in next to the Lionel Richie records and things of that nature. So they would take these type of things, throw them in the imports. Some of them actually were imports. Some of them were just domestic records that they didn't know where to file. In this case, I remember distinctly, there were two records back to back. There was this one, and there was the same record, but on Portrait Records, and it was in that tight shrink wrap. The imports sort of came in a looser shrink wrap, and that was also an indication that was probably going to be a cooler issue of that record. And it was probably like $2 more, but I went ahead and spent the extra $2 and got this. So this is definitely European release for the extra $2 in 1983, I think is when I got it. At the time, I had a pen pal from California, and they sent me a tape of a radio show there called the Mighty Metal Hour. And just off of that tape alone, there was probably 20 or 25 songs on that. And out of those 25, 20 of those have become staple records in my collection and in my metal history.
Because one of the greatest songs off that album is Fast as a Shark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Iconic double bass.
Absolutely. In fact, I was in a band in the late 80s, and our drummer had played in Nasty Savage, and his name was Curtis, and we actually just lost him a couple of weeks ago. His nickname was Curtis the Shark, because he basically learned how to play double bass from playing along to this record, especially Fast as a Shark. So rest in peace, Kurt. What do you got for your last one?
My last one is everyone's iconic favorite record, Master of Puppets by Metallica. Funny story about this one. One of my very first jobs was I got my first or second paycheck, and I walked into one of our local record stores, and I'm like, I want to see what cool metal stuff they have. And Master of Puppets caught my eye, and I felt so excited to spend my hard-earned money on probably on an album I still love till this day.
Absolutely. Well, I remember when that came out, I listened to the living shit out of that record. So much to the point where I had to put it away for like 20 years. And then he comes into my life and gets old enough to start buying his own records. And so he fills out his Metallica collection. And there's an awful lot of it that gets played around here. And it's to the point I'm really burnt out on it. Great record. Love the record. I could really go the rest of my life without hearing it because I've just heard it so freaking much. But yeah, this is when Elektra signed them right after Ride the Lightning came out, and they reissued all those Megaforce records on Elektra, and then this was their first Elektra record.
And it was a pretty heavy album for being on Elektra.
Hell yeah! I mean, the major labels weren't used to that kind of heaviness. Prior to that, they were used to getting a heavy guitar sound for Billy Squier type of stuff. This was a whole different thing for major labels, and then once this caught on, every major label had to have a thrash band. So they all got signed out of the box. You had Anthrax went to Island Records, Megadeth went to Capitol Records. The Slayer, that was considered a major label, so the big four went to major labels, and then they started picking up next tier bands and things like that. Testament went to Atlantic.
Overkill.
Yeah, Overkill went to Atlantic. Atlantic picked up a lot of bands, and Atlantic always tried to turn one band into something else that was already popular. So like Atlantic picked up Twisted Sister, and that was successful. So then they signed Raven and tried to make Raven into Twisted Sister, and it just didn't work. I mean, they really, major label killed a great band. Same thing with Saxon. Saxon, they were doing this great, Motorhead style metal with good vocals. Not that Lemmy was a bad vocalist, but Biff is a singer, and
he had those great high notes that he hit.
Absolutely. So they were signed to Capitol Records, and Capitol Records just tried to turn them into this American mush metal, and it was just I wasn't into it.
Going back to the Saxons, a singer, heavy metal thunder is a type of song that his voice really shines in that.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of my favorites is Strong Arm of the Law, and his performance on that's first class.
Yeah, you have that song, you have Motorcycle Man, you have like all these songs that you can really hear his unique voice, and I'm like, man, I want a song like that now.
Yeah, no, definitely one of my favorites. So that's what we had. We have this one kind of sitting on the shelf for a while, and as you know, we got hit with those hurricanes, and the studio here was flooded out for a little bit. But hopefully it works out and you guys have enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, tell some friends, and tell us in the content. In the comments, what was the record that turned you on to one of your favorite bands? What was the circumstances? Was it the day that you discovered Anthrax, or was it the first time you heard Kiss or whatever? There's so many of those stories we could have done, but we really wanted to do specifically 80s records and just a six-pack. So
it's like the first time I heard Iron Maiden, I'm like, what is this awesome stuff? And until this day, they're probably my top 10 favorite metal bands that are like from a different country.
Absolutely. So we've got tons of stories like that. So thank you for doing the video with me. We'll work on some other ones. Thank you guys for watching. Both of you have been great for checking us out, and tell a friend. All right. Until next time. See you on the B-side.